have his time slot here tonight, and so thank you, appreciate that. The Lord has greatly blessed me this year. All of us, certainly can say that. I've been able to travel 3 times to Europe this year. I've never traveled that much in my life in any one year, but God had some missions that I'm grateful that He has allowed me to go on with your support. Not only financial support, but most importantly, prayer support. So you'll remember that back in the springtime that I was able to go to Poland for a week, and on the heels of that, I had no sooner got back than I had an email said, hey, would you be willing to go for 2 weeks and this time go into Ukraine? And so I'm like, well, oh, here am I, Lord, send me, So we did that, and so really grateful for those opportunities. And so this particular trip that I just had that we'll be looking at here tonight is military outreach. This is where my heart really is and has been ever since I was this little, spiritually speaking. I know it's hard to believe I was this little once, but my spiritual journey started in Germany, in Berlin in 1976, and that's where I put the Lord on in baptism. And so Kathy and I, we married soon after that, and we were involved in military ministry whether we wanted to or not, kind of thing. And so we found ourselves in congregations where sometimes maybe it was only a handful of us that were there, and then other times we were at different times, 3 different tours, total of 10 years in Europe. And so some of what I'm going to share tonight is kind of a replay for all of that. But I grew up, spiritually speaking, in congregations like this, most of the time, again, smaller numbers. So I had to preach, I had to teach, I had to lead the Lord's Supper, I had to pray, had to even lead singing, if you can believe that. And so I found out where my talents do not lie. And so Kathy said, honey, that's not your talent. And I'm like, oh, that wounded me, but I got over it. But I love to sing. But it's an important part of being a Christian is that we carry the gospel wherever we go. And more importantly, I don't know if I could say more importantly, just as important, maybe I should put it that way, are those who are in the United States military taking the gospel where they go. In effect, we were military missionaries. We were supported fully to be on the military mission field that took us overseas. And so this ministry that you all know, Military Outreach and Encouragement, or MORE as an acronym, has been a part of what we have been doing for many, many years. Started out in Denver, and then we came here, Mayfair, and we worked with this ministry, and we brought it here. And so because of the pandemic, and we can pin a lot of blame on the coronavirus, and we didn't have a lot happening there, but God was really working through all of that, and had blessed me with an opportunity to get some books published that was really on our hearts and in our minds to be able to do that, to be able to have some resources to help Christians who are in various places in the world, whether stationed on land, whether at sea, or wherever that may be, that we were able to do that. And so this is what I want to share here tonight. And so primarily this trip was twofold. The main thing was I was trying to identify where we have Christians stationed in Europe. And that's not an easy task to find out. When we're talking Christianity as a whole, as evangelical Christianity, there's a lot of believers out there. But we're talking about Christians in the New Testament sense, as we understand that. And so once upon a time, before the Privacy Act came into being and the HIPAA laws, that we were able to go into a chaplain's office on a military installation and say, hey, can you tell us who are members of the Churches of Christ? And we were able to get a printout, and we could use that to encourage those who are in the military. But we can't do that anymore. So we have to find other ways to do that. And so the last time that I was over on this similar trip was in 2019. And of course, we were already visiting here with the congregation. And we had it in our minds and our hearts that eventually we would come here and be full-time workers with you all. And so that particular year in 2019, I was in, you'll recall, Japan and in Korea for 8 weeks. And so that was all a part of this military ministry. And then at the end of 2019, I went to Europe for about 3.5 weeks. And so this is a little shorter trip on this particular one. But you see up here, and I forgot to bring my laser pointer, so you'll just have to, in your mind's eye, that I'm going to point to some things up here, and I'll tell you what they are. Okay, so you see the countries that I was in on this trip here. And of course, being part of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and if you've not really known much about that, certainly here in the last several months since the war in Ukraine has been going on, that NATO plays a very large role. In the United States, we take a leading role in NATO. And so this was all part of what I did. So went to Frankfurt, and this is where I flew into and then flew out of. This map will give you a little bit of an idea, and again, I don't have a pointer that works, but up there in the blacked out box, you see where it has the Moore Mission area, and I drew, I put a yellow dotted or yellow dashed circle or an oval up there, just to kind of give you an idea that that is the territory where I was at scope of work here. So I tried to retrace my path by putting it up here. So looking at the smaller circle in red in the bold, that's Frankfurt, and that's where I started out, okay? And then in the larger circle is the primary area where I spent a lot of time. And then the arrows, you can see where I went up and down and over and across and up and down and over across again. And so that was kind of the trek that I took. And so when I flew into Frankfurt, I rented a car, and that's, there's other ways to get around Europe, but primarily to get where I needed to be, I had to use an automobile. You can take you can take a train, you can take buses, you can take taxis, you can take Uber, but that's not what I needed, and so that's what I did. So when I rented a car, I went to Kaiserslautern. Kaiserslautern, or K-Town, is those who have ever been in the military stationed over in Europe. That's just a shorter version of, instead of saying Kaiserslautern, you say K-Town. So Americans know that as K-Town. And you'll see some pictures up here. That is the largest military community outside the United States, and that's where I spent a good bit of time right there. And so that was kind of my base of operations where I worked at. So Kaiserslautern military community, you see up here on the left, you'll see just a lot of different names. It's a little hard to read from way in the back, and I understand that. So there's a lot of military installations in this area, and so that was, again, a lot of time that I spent there for that. So second thing that I went to do is a book promotion tour. So this is planting seeds of the gospel through our books here, and I forgot to bring Spiritual Battle Rattle here tonight, and you're familiar with that. A lot of you have a copy of that. But what I did in this is my goal was to travel to as many military bases, all U.S. bases or NATO bases, and give a set of these books: Spiritual Battle Rattle, God's Armor, and Spiritually Wounded Warriors, An Army of One Another, and give a set to not each chaplain. We couldn't afford to do that, and I just couldn't carry all that over with me, but I took 24 of each copies. And so what I did is, when I went to a military installation, I went to the chaplain's office. And it didn't matter who I talked to, whether it was the head chaplain or whether it was just one of the staff chaplains. But my goal was to go in to make a contact with them, to let them know about these books and as a resource to their ministry. And so hopefully we'll get some good feedback on that they'll use that to help where they are. And so as soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, so forth, get a copy of this, hopefully, prayerfully, that they will search the scriptures daily to see whether these things are so. That they'll look at what we've written, they'll go to the scriptures, and they'll check it out for themselves. And so planting the seeds of the gospel. So again, that's what we did. So because of our time here tonight, I'll be speeding along a little bit more as I watch the numbers go by here. This is the church building, Gemeinde Christi, that is Church of Christ in German. And that is their building that they have there. This building is owned by the church. It has been there about 60 years. And so they used to have a very vibrant numbers in the congregation. What happens in military congregations, especially overseas, it is very cyclical, okay? So there's a cycle, there's a transition cycle. So when a family moves to Europe, they're going to be there for 3 years generally, maybe 4 with the Air Force or others. But generally about 3 years. And so there's a lot of overlapping. So some congregations will have just very few this year, and then next year they have more families come in and numbers go up, and then the other families who came in earlier, they leave, and so there's that cycle that goes up and down. So Kaiserslautern, again, being the largest U.S. military installation land-wise and personnel-wise in all of the world, the Church of Christ here at Kaiserslautern, once upon a time, and I wish we could say that was so now, but there's some reasons why it's not as large as it used to be. But they used to be very, very large and a beacon and help for the Lord's church over in Europe. So that's my rental car there, by the way. So that was a little bitty thing. I just had to fold down and get in there and then get back out again. So, but it worked really good. So, okay. So my first stop then, rented a car, went to Kaiserslautern. And with jet lag, I'm like, okay, I'm going to fight against that. I was going to spend the next day locally, but I decided, no, I'm going to get on the road and we're going to get to this. I had the task. I had it all lined out. And so I went up, and you see that map there on the left where it says NATO Air Base Geilenkirchen. Okay? And that is a NATO base. And so we have, there's probably 1,000 or more U.S. military stationed there, as well as others of different NATO countries. So I went there again. I was here 3 years ago, but I went there. And interesting enough, for those of you that like military aircraft, and being a soldier, I love going to Air Force bases. Yeah, I see heads going. Yeah, it's really cool to see what they have. Okay, and so that picture up there, the radar domes up there. That's what they do. They'll fly around their particular airspace. And they have the capability of seeing downrange, and they can see what's happening on radar and all the sophistication that they have, and it's early warning. So if there's something happening, it's going to be picked up on radar, and it's going to be relayed, and then therefore, whatever the next steps are. But this is the first chaplain that I met here. Interesting enough, he's from Poland. And as soon as he opened his mouth and he started talking to me, I said, "Are you from Poland?" He says, "Yeah." That's what I thought. But he gladly took the books there and so forth. So that was Geilenkirchen. Same day, I drove over the border to the Netherlands, Holland, and I went to this Allied joint base in the city or town. Really, it's small town, city, called Brunsum. And that is where there's a very large presence of Allied military there from all different countries within NATO. And so you see some of the pictures here. A lot of these I had to get from the internet to supplement because I was not able to take all of these photos. But I was able to connect with the chaplain there. This gentleman here, he is Dutch, and he's the chaplain administrator. And so I was able to meet him, and then later I was able to meet the U.S. chaplain, but in another area there. But he gladly took the books and said, "We appreciate it," and so forth. And so, and then you can see U.S. Army Garrison Benelux. So the acronym Benelux: Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and so that comprises that area. Here's a map of Belgium, and you see in the middle of the map of city of Brussels, the capital of Brussels, down below, and I forgot to put my circle around it, but that's where I spent probably about a day and a half here in this area. So I went to Chevers Air Force Base. This particular base was once strictly all Air Force in their mission, but now it's a joint base, so the Army has a presence here as well. So this is where I lodged at night. I spent 2 nights in the Army lodge there, and being able to make the connections there in which I did. And so, again, this is just some of the photos of the buildings there. This right here, this is the headquarters of the NATO's military force. Okay, so the acronym shape, Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe. And so the general is most often is the ranking U.S. General, and so it's led by 4 stars. So very, very secure compound there. We were stationed here for 3 years. Nicole was little, and so we were there. So going back there 3 years ago and then going there on this trip just was really a trip down memory lane in a lot of ways. And so in order to get on this particular base, I was able to use my military ID card as a retiree, and they were able to scan me in, and I was able to get into every single base except this one because of the high security, because this is NATO's military headquarters, and so they're not going to let you on. And so these are the flags that represent all of the countries within NATO headquarters that are stationed there. You see that I had to get a mugshot, I had to get a special permission, but I was able, there's out here at Redstone Arsenal at the chaplain's office, there is a civilian employee that I met 3 years ago in Belgium, same place, right here. I met this guy, Frank, and he was leaving. His time was up. He's working for the military, not in the military, but working for the military. And I said, "Oh, where are you going?" 3 years ago. "Where are you going, Frank?" "I'm going to Redstone Arsenal." I go, "Are you really?" "That's where I live." So anyway, so it was Frank was able to get me a contact, and that was very, very important because I would not have been able to get on without a sponsor to have a visitor pass. 3 chaplains here. These are all Army chaplains. And so they were gracious, very friendly, very interested in what we've been doing. And so it was a great blessing to get to spend time, just a little bit of time with these gentlemen here. So here's that hospital that I worked in for 3 years. And again, from the outside it looks like it used to. Going inside, I couldn't find my way around, had no idea, but that's progress. So just again, a trip down memory lane. It's just the healthcare facility there's right there. So I left there. So remember, I flew in on November the 8th, left here on 7th, got there on the 8th. The 9th and the 10th, I did this round robin. And so that was finished, and so I was on my way back to Germany, but I wanted to spend Veterans Day at the military cemetery, and so that's what I did. I was there 3 years ago again at this particular location, was able to be part of the annual commemoration for those fallen heroes. And so this I captured on my phone, on my GPS, showing an aerial view of just how large that this whole field of grave markers are. And so it's just a real humbling experience. And so this is the main entrance there. Some of you may have been there before and have recognized that. Just discount the guy in the front. It's like, Kilroy was here kind of thing. Very, very foggy that day. And so that just really added more to the atmosphere, the ambiance of the, what it was like to be there in the presence of all of these witnesses. And it was so moving to see the color guard come in here. And we had the American ambassador. I didn't get to meet him last year. This is a new one that was, 3 years ago. I didn't meet the one 3 years ago. This one, I don't remember his name, but he is currently the new ambassador, American ambassador to Luxembourg. And so I was able to meet him, shake his hand, get the photo op there. And of course, you see on the right-hand side, General George S. Patton is buried there, off in a separate grave right there. So again, a very solemn place to be in the accompaniment of heroes. So left there, this is a marker showing going back into Germany. So at this point in time, it's just a matter of 2 days. I was able to connect with chaplains in German border right up by Holland. Then I went over into Holland and connected, and then I went down to Belgium and connected, and now I'm on my way back over to Kaiserslautern again. So here I am again, back again. So I spent that weekend right there with these brothers here, and what has happened, and we definitely want to pray for the Lord's work over in this part of the world, and especially Kaiserslautern. These two brothers here, this German brother Dietmar, he is one of the faithful brothers there. They used to have a German congregation, so in the building where they meet, there's 2 apartments, and you couldn't really see the whole thing. And every time I go and others go, I'm able to stay in the American, preacher's apartment. Of course, they don't have a preacher living there right now. They're without one, so I'm able to stay there, and others too. But they have this opportunity, and so Brother Dietmar and then Brother Herb right over here on the right has been there for 36 years. And so he was in the Air Force, he was converted here, and he is stationed here, been there all of his adult life. And so the church right here, and this was Sunday, they're only meeting because of COVID. COVID's done a number, and a lot of people have not come back. And of course, there's been other issues as well that people have left, and now there's only 5 who are worshiping there. And so they were just eager for us to be together. And so you see the folks there. So gentleman in the middle, forget his name right offhand, but he is from the Caribbean. And so, but he speaks German. He lives over there. I don't know his particular background circumstances as why there and not somewhere else. But he's very evangelistic, and he goes out every day, rides his bicycle, and he meets people and all that. So the other couple on the left, the gentleman in the white shirt, and that's his German wife. They're fairly new Christians and newly married as well. So that's a real challenge and a joy for them. So again, it was just a few of us that were together, but it was great to encourage one another. Landstuhl, this is the Army's major premier medical center outside the United States that we've been to. So we're familiar with what's gone on for the last 20 years, for the last couple of decades, in particular with the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And so wounded veterans would come here to Landstuhl to be treated before they would be evacuated back here to the United States. And so I was able to meet this lady here. Again, don't know her name, I've got her card. She works with the Wounded Warrior Project. And in conjunction with the American Red Cross, the Wounded Warrior Project and American Red Cross partner to help wounded warriors there. And so she was very interested in our books as a resource and all of that. So I've got still some homework to do. I've got follow-up work to do, to email and so forth, and try to see what can be done. Went into the chaplain's office there, and this is the head chaplain. And interesting enough, I found out, I didn't know it when I was in there, and he was in a hurry. Like most of the ones that I talked with, they were either going to a meeting or they were in a meeting and they were going to another meeting. So that's kind of the life in which they're doing. This guy's a major, but I didn't know until I was down the hallway a little bit later. And the hospital commander, full colonel, I don't remember if he was Army or Air Force because there's joint military there, but he was talking to this chaplain, and I overheard the commander saying, ask, well, how you doing, and whatever the dialogue. I wasn't trying to really kind of hone in on it, but I did catch this. He said, Well, you ought to get to it because you're getting promoted today. So, so he was on the verge of getting his new pin on for lieutenant colonel. But anyway, so right there, unit ministry team, that's what they're involved in. Ramstein Air Base. So again, in this big area here, and Dinah is very, very familiar with some of this. She grew up, she went to school at Ramstein High School, I believe. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Your dad was in the Air Force and all that. So yeah, this is kind of like, trip down memory lane for you too. So this is the largest air base that is in Europe, and so it's kind of the gateway to Europe now. So you can just see some of the aircraft and things there really kind of show that, and some of the housing and so forth that is there. So then I went to Sambach Air Base. Well, it's no longer an air base. And again, this is close to Kaiserslautern. There's just a lot of it. When the U.S. decided they were going to close bases, they just, they fell like dominoes. There was a plan, but I don't know why, but they did what they did. But this was one of them. This base was a full-fledged air base, U.S. Air Force base, back in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and then it went away. And so they were going down, and then it got ramped back up. So now the Army has it, and they have a lot of major commands and a lot of different stuff going on there. And so, interesting enough, the photo on the left is the U.S. Navy. I couldn't believe we had U.S. Navy presence there, but they're wounded warriors for those sailors who are injured either physically or they have an emotional wound, maybe they have PTSD, whatever it is they're going through. They leave wherever they are, they leave their ships, they leave their bases, and they come to Germany. And they come to this little bitty town of Sambach where there's nothing going on, and it's designed that way on purpose. So I was able to meet the U.S. Navy chaplain. I forgot to ask for his picture, so I don't have it up here. But I met a Navy chaplain there and was able to get books into his hands. While I was there at Sambach, I was able to meet up. The Army chaplain here, this medical group, was not there, but I met this the sergeant here, and so she was willing to take these books and to put them on the desk, and so hopefully we'll see what turns out from that. Okay. Baumholder. Baumholder's, my next one. Some of you may have heard of Baumholder. It's been around for a long time. It's a big Army presence that is there. So, there are joint bases now. It used to be you'd have your Air Force, and you'd have your Army, and you'd have your Navy. And now with cost cutting and all of that, they a lot of times just combine. And so that's what's happened. But this installation here is all Army, and that's the chaplain. And interesting enough, this guy is also from Poland. And so he spoke with a dialect. And so he was one that was coming out of a meeting and getting ready to go into another meeting. And it was kind of like a handoff. Sir, can I take a picture? Yeah. And then he ran and he went into his next meeting. So that was kind of what I had to do a lot of times. I was in and I was out. Be brief, be seen, be gone. And that's what I had to do. Next place is Spangdahlem Air Base. Spangdahlem is one of those that was on the list to be cut. But because of what's been happening with Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, that we are keeping that open. And so when I went there, I was able to meet with one of the chaplains there. Some of those were there that they didn't want to have their name tags, in the photos for good reason, for security. So they'd hold up the books, and a few of them were like, just hold them up. You can see their name and their rank and all that. So, yeah. So Spangdahlem Air Base, that is a very dynamic set of resources that's there. This was probably one of the coolest pictures. I did not take this because I would have to have been up in the air to see that. But I found that this afternoon, and I thought that was really cool. That's right there. I see Hart is eating this up. He's loving this. Okay, so Wiesbaden. The sound of the W is a V, so when I don't say Wiesbaden, it's Wiesbaden with a V. That's how you say it. I feel crazy if I don't. So this used to also be an Air Force base back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and in the 90s. It went away, and now it's become Army. So it is the headquarters for the United States Army Europe. And it's also headquarters for U.S. Africa Command. So we have all of that right here, and you can see that. And the chaplain there, this lieutenant colonel, was very, very nice and spent a little bit of time with me. And so he was very open and thankful for our resources. And then went down to Stuttgart. So after having made that initial circle, and it really was a circle because where I started out, I came back 360 degrees, and now I'm heading south into Bavaria, and so this is at Stuttgart. And so Patch Barracks, this is where the EUCOM headquarters is at. That's European Command. So that is a very major command headquarters. So again, Geilenkirchen was a NATO base. Belgium, or over in Netherlands, was another NATO base. Shape Belgium was a NATO base, and now we have another one here. So the reason I'm saying that is because the appreciation for what's going on. We have a lot of higher ranking military people who are at a lot of these bases. So you don't get the privates, you don't get the specialists, you don't get the sergeants oftentimes. So you have higher ranking. So it's just a different crowd. And so this chaplain right here, interesting enough, is from, where did he say, Birmingham? I think he said he was from Birmingham. So that really hit close to home. Interesting enough, and I'll just say this for just a quick minute, and then we'll move on, and so we can finish our time here. But he was telling me, and this is where kind of rubber meets the road, I guess, with chaplains. I have personal opinion about chaplains. If you want to know what that is, we can talk about that later. But this particular chaplain here was telling me that the word in the barracks, and being a captain, he's lower ranking than the other chaplains, okay? And so he's going and spending time with his soldiers. And he said that in the barracks, he said that there is an underlying, how do you say that? of evil. We'll just put it that way. There is evil that is within the barracks where soldiers live. These we're talking young 18-year-olds, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Okay, if you live in the barracks, chances are you're not married, and if you're married and you're living in the barracks, and maybe you're having some marital problems. But there's a lot of problems. He was saying there's demon worship, there's Satan worship going on. And he said that that's not always known across the whole plane. He said the higher rank you get, he said they're more, and this chaplain told me this captain said other chaplains of higher rank are more worried about what they're wearing on their collar and their careers than being concerned of what's going on in the individual soldier's life. And so it was interesting that he said there's a spiritual war going on. And he talked about Satanism. He talked about a lot of things. And so he said, I had never heard or I'd never met a witch, a self-proclaimed witch. A Wiccan is one who practices witchcraft that is recognized by the United States military as a religion. So if you're a Wiccan, you can have your own worship service, whatever that, imagine what that is. If you're an atheist, you can have your own gathering. So there's just a lot of things going on there that is just evil. So moving on. So pretty much done with Germany. So we're talking, it's been a week here, and I've covered a lot of kilometers. I have not gone back and figured out how many. I think probably about as many as I did 3 years ago, and I drove over 5,000 kilometers then. So that's a lot of miles. So I left Germany, Bavaria, southern Germany, and now I drove up, I didn't get out of Stuttgart until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so I drove all afternoon, drove all evening, thought I was going to go through the night. Went up through Czech Republic, finally found a hotel, so on my way to Poland. Get into Poland, and you might recognize this. I knew that I was very, very close to Auschwitz. There's a town by the name of Auschwitz, so that is a real town that's there. This is the location of these World War II death camps, these concentration camps. And Kathy and I have been to one down in southern Germany, Dachau. Kenny and Andrea, I think you've been there. Or not, you've heard of them, you traveled around down there. Anyway, so while I was here, I wanted to see this firsthand. I wanted to spend at least, a little bit of time. And so this is a stock photo that I got, because obviously this is not now, this was back then, okay? But here's what it looked like, the picture that I took. And interesting enough, Arbeit macht frei, or free, means work makes you free. The biggest lie that Satan told was putting this up here. Work did not make them free. Work did not make them free. But they tried to make the Jews and the Poles and everybody else say, oh, hey, this is going to be a great place to be. Well, and of course, it was as cold as all get out while I was there, so I'm glad I had a little muffler on my ears there. Very, very poignant. Again, I threw in just some other photos here just to show what it looked like. I walked the grounds where these pictures were, where these people were. I walked through that center gate, and I'm like, I can't believe that I'm here, seeing this. This photo I took. This is one rail car that represents the trainloads and trainloads and trainloads of Jews, Poles, Czechs, you name it, that they were not good enough, that they were deemed unfit for society and brought here. And there's a lot of other death camps that were around Europe, but this is one this is actually a museum now. And so this is to help you and I, to never forget what humanity does at its evilest moments. And I went through and I saw the gas ovens. And Dinah, I think we were talking recently about that. And so, boy, I tell you, when you read about it, you hear about it's one thing, but when you go and you walk in there and you look at it yourself and you go, did this really happen? Yeah, it really happened. Awful, awful. So, got up here. The big house, we're praying. This is where the Ukrainian Christians are living in Warsaw, right there. I was there back in the spring and so on and so forth. I did realize right now that I forgot to put in just a couple of other pictures, and I'm going to tell you about them before we go on here. Before I got up here, this is in Warsaw. So I was in Auschwitz, then I went over to another city with an airport, and don't ask me how to pronounce that city's name. Nicole has to be here to help me pronounce it. But I was within 70 kilometers, or about 60 some miles from the Ukraine border on this trip. And so what I had planned to do was to try to meet up with elements of the 82nd Airborne Division out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, soldiers that are at this airport. This airport there that I went to, I knew I wasn't going to be able to get on because of a big security list. My ID card was not going to get me anywhere on that one. But I was able to meet up with some American soldiers that were coming out, and I go, hey, I made contact with them and say, hey, this is why I'm here, and can you get some books into the chaplain for me? Oh, yeah, I'll do that. But interesting enough, and Steve, you and I were talking about this, and I'll have to get the picture and send it to you, but I saw with my own eyes, we had ground-to-air missiles, okay, on rocket launchers. These are U.S., and they ringed the whole airport, and they were all up like this. They were all pointed toward Ukraine and toward Russia. And so that particular airport, where we have our troops and all that, that is where all humanitarian goods are coming in, one of the places where all armament is coming in. When you read that the U.S. is, continuing to send in more arms and munitions, this was one of the places I went. But I forgot to put the picture in there. But went up here, wanted to meet up with some of the brethren here. These good ladies, these are Ukrainian sisters here, and they insisted that they were going to feed me. And so I had the best bowl of borscht, okay, Yeah, you're shaking your head, Hart. That's good stuff. Yeah. This Ukrainian Borscht was just awesome, and they were just sweetest ladies, and so they were all, oh, we're so glad, because I had met them before back in the springtime when Nicole and Lukasz were there. So anyway, that was great. Brother here on the left, he is from the country of Armenia, but he's married to a Ukrainian, and he is a preacher there in Ukraine. And he's actually a teacher at the Bear Valley Bible Institute of Ukraine. Okay, and so I had met him before in Lviv when I was there, but he wanted a copy of the books, and he was just so excited about that. And the great thing that I'm excited about here is that they've asked for our books if we could translate them, or if they could translate them into Ukrainian and Ukrainian and Russian languages. And I said, yes, let's do that. So we're trying to work on that and get that happening here. So this is the last place that I stopped, Ansbach, and so this is another military installation. This chaplain, before he got here about a year ago, where he's at right now, he was here at Redstone Arsenal, and he lived over here in Madison. So interesting, never know. So that pretty much sums it up. I was in Rothenburg, there at the retreat. This is the annual retreat. Started out as a military retreat many years ago, but now there's hardly any Christians from the military that attend there. So we're trying to make a change on that and get that going here. So we're wrapping that up. Had a great time with the brethren there, and so this is all of us here. 58th annual retreat that was there. So we had Christians from all over Europe. Didn't have as many from the U.S. this year because of COVID, and I kind of thought that was good, so we didn't have as many Americans, because we wanted to get all local national Christians and missionaries and all that, and this was us. So that was fantastic. City of Rothenburg, a medieval city, about 1400 AD. It dates back, and so just a couple of last parting pictures right here. And it is an awesome place. So, thank you. I never know how these things are going to go, because I didn't have time to rehearse it, and go, okay, yeah, but we're going to get out here in just a moment. I do want to offer the invitation for the Lord. Lord's invitation is open all the time, and I think probably all of us here, because we come all of the time, understand that. Okay, the Lord's invitation, is always open. And this time that we have here tonight is no different. Maybe there is something on your heart. Maybe you have something really pressing on your heart that you want to share. Maybe not necessarily in a public way, but maybe there's something that you'd like to share privately with the elders, and we would love to meet with you on that. Maybe there's something that you need to make known to the congregation, to make right before the Lord. If you haven't been as faithful to Christ and His church as you like to be, and as you know you need to be, then we're here to help you. And so we also want to offer the invitation, if you've not yet put on Christ, to have your sins washed away, to be raised up a new creature, then why not tonight? I mean, we have that song, we sing, oh, why not tonight? Well, really, why not tonight? Because we don't know tomorrow. And Angie Glass, we made mention that Angie passed away unexpectedly on Thursday or Friday. I don't remember exactly. Yes. So she was in good health and then had whatever happened, and she was gone. So that's just a reminder that we're not here for very long. It can go like that. So whatever we can do tonight, thank you for your kind attention. Thank you for allowing me to share all of this. And if you'd like a printed copy of my report that kind of goes into more detail, I can get that to you too. But thank you for your support, for your encouragement, and so forth. Whatever you need is, let us know as we stand and as we sing.